Welcome to Highline Excel class number 42. Hey, if you want to download this workbook and follow along, click on my YouTube channel, then click on my college website link. You can download the workbook, Week 8, Business 214. Hey, we get to talk about the lookup function. Lookup function was one of the very first functions way before VLOOKUP and H Lookup. One of the interesting things about lookup is that it can do horizontal or vertical lookup. Usually people don't use this anymore because they use VLOOKUP. And most things are vertical, so they use VLOOKUP. Now lookup, first column has to be sorted in ascending order, just like when you're using VLOOKUP and you're doing an approximate match. Only does approximate lookup. Oh, so the lookup can't do exact match. Always, and we saw that. We saw all four circumstances in our VLOOKUP video, the very first part of the VLOOKUP video, what exact match does. But lookup, the lookup function can't do exact match. Only does approximate. Always returns a value from the last column. Now VLOOKUP, we have to tell it which column to retrieve something from. Lookup just automatically, if you highlight this many, it takes it from the last one. If you highlight this many, it takes it from the last one always. VLOOKUP can do V or H lookup, and it can have two separate vectors, which we'll see just a little bit. All right, let's do a vertical lookup first. See if I can zoom in here a little bit. All right, so I'm going to do lookup equals lookup. If I can only type. And so we have our screen tip right here. Lookup value, well, that's going to be this 5,000, comma. And our lookup vector, it can be a single vector here, and then the result vector, which we'll look at later, or an array. So we have a lookup value in an array. Oh, we want to return the rate right here. So I'm going to highlight just those two columns. What you're telling lookup is if you have two columns, it's always going to get the value from the last one. And then we can simply close parentheses. See, different than VLOOKUP, we're not telling it the second column, and then enter. And there it calculated the right one. Let's go ahead and change this to 33,000. And then sure enough, the 33,000, it's getting this 3% or decimal there. So that was vertical lookup. Now, how did it know to do vertical lookup? Oh, because it counts. And there's more rows than there are columns, so it does vertical. Now let's look at horizontal. Same table. But there's more columns than there are rows, so it's programmed to do H lookup. So equals lookup. And here's our value, comma. And I'm going to highlight this whole table. And now it's going to do H lookup just like we did in the last video. Oh, I want to highlight just these two rows because unlike vertical and horizontal lookup, we don't have to tell it which column to return something from. So it's automatically going to take, in this case, rows, row 1, row 2. So because there's a second row, it'll return it from that. Close parentheses and Control Enter. If we change this value right here to 45,000. How about 100,000? We can see the lookup doing VLOOKUP got it right, and the lookup doing H lookup also got it right. It got the 1% way out here. So one of the interesting things about lookup, you can do VLOOKUP or H lookup, but really don't forget, gotta sort ascending and only does approximate. Let's go look at another example here. Now, a couple video goes, or two videos ago when we did VLOOKUP, we did commissions. I also have another video at YouTube on a tax table and how you use multiple VLOOKUPs to make a tax calculation. Here we did it to do a commissions payment based on some sales. And what it did is it looked up, third column, right? So it looked up the 5,000. It got that 925 plus it took this amount, and VLOOKUP looked up in the first column, found the 50,000. So 55,000 minus 5,000 was 5,000. That's inside the parentheses. And then finally, we did a third VLOOKUP on the second column to get the 6%. Let's do the same thing with lookup. Equals lookup. And lookup value is going to be this, comma, and then the lookup array here, I'm going to highlight, oh, we want the last column, so I'm going to highlight all 3. See, by default, lookup only takes the value from the last column. So close parentheses. And then we need to plus, in parentheses, this minus, and I'm going to Control V because I copied it, same little lookup piece, lookup. But now we want the sale. So I'm going to highlight just the first column. Close parentheses. You're telling lookup by highlighting just one column to the lookup value. The lookup value and the return value are in the same column. And then this close parentheses times and then one last lookup. And now we want just 2 columns. Close parentheses. Now look, here we want it from the second column, so we only have 2 columns highlighted. The first one we did A to C because we want to return something from here. And then the lookup right here, we want to return something from just the first one, so it's A to A. Control Enter. Now, why would you use either one? Pretty much you'd never use the lookup. VLOOKUP is just as fast calculating, and whatever percentage, extremely high people know that, but they don't know lookup. But you could do it. There's a few less cell references in there and arguments and whatnot. All right, let's go to our next lookup trick. And we'll scroll up. And our next trick, how about lookup to the left? Can VLOOKUP do this? If we want to take this flying range 160, a customer comes and say, hey, I want a boomerang that's 160 meters. We want to look up through this, find 160, and jump to the left and say, hey, you need boomerang 9. Well, the VLOOKUP can't do that, but the lookup can. Let's see how to do it. We'll use the 2 vectors, equals lookup. The lookup value is going to be this right here, comma. The lookup vector is going to be this. And then comma, the result vector will be this. So the result vector can be anywhere as long as it's the same size. Close parentheses and Control Enter. Hey, that works just fine. But there's a problem. If we wanted to sort product ID, which we probably would, right-click Sort in this version, A to Z. Then we have the primary key in order here. Oh, there's a problem. See, the lookup can only look up something sorted, or it does approximate match, not exact match. So the fact now this is sorted in ascending order, or this one is sorted in ascending order, and this one is not. See, when you have words like this, sort goes by the alphabet. And so this is space 1 should come right after this is space 1. So lookup returns the wrong value. Right, and this formula right here, which we haven't learned how to do yet, index and match, we'll learn it in our next video. That formula will work just fine. So that really is the better option. Scroll down here. So what I'm showing you this just so that you say, oh, it can go to the left, but it only works in certain situations. Remember, the lookup can't do exact match. It only does sorted ascending and approximate. Just to show you, though, you could do a lookup if you did have things sorted ascending and it was approximate. It does not matter where the ranges are. So this lookup is looking up this. It's looking in this range right here and returning something from over here. Right now, name 2, it's 1, 2. So over here, it looks 1 and 2 and returns the 6, 18. Let's look at a good example. Now, we're not only going to see that the VLOOKUP can do 2 vectors set up wherever in the spreadsheet, but we're also going to see in this trick that lookup can handle arrays just like the SUMPRODUCT function. Now let's look at our setup here. We have some phrases. Accounting should be the first class. You may have an Excel test during your interview. So we have longer text strings. And we actually need a formula to look up, take the longer text string and look up and find a shorter subtext string and return from the second column here. Now this trick came from Barry Houdini at the Mr. Excel message board. This was from last year's Mr. Excel Challenge, and he won it with his amazing formula. Now we're going to use lookup, but we're also going to use the search function. Search function will take a text string and say, hey, where is it in the longer text string? So we could say, take Excel and look through here, and it'll say, oh, that's at the 17th position. Accounting, it would find the number 1. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to use a big number, 2 to the 15th. 2 to the 15th is 1 character more than the number of characters allowed in a cell. And before we use it in our formula, let's just prove that to ourselves. 2 to the 15th, we'll use the repeat function and repeat a character 2 to the 15th and see if it'll let us do it. Equals repeat, double quote, explanation quote, double quote, comma, 2 caret 15th. That means 2 raised to the 15th power. And then close parentheses. It gives us a value error. Now let's try the same thing. But now we'll subtract 1. And 2 to the 15th is 32,776. Minus 1, it's 32,767, which that is allowed. So when I hit Enter, it shows us all those characters. The reason why that's important is because sometimes in analyzing text strings, you have an array of numbers representing positions in text strings. And if you say 2 to the 15th, that's bigger than any single one of them. So let's see if we can do our formula here with that lead up to it. Equals lookup. The lookup value is going to be our 2 to the 15th, comma, and now we're going to create an array of error messages and positions from our text string. Our lookup vector is going to be created by the search function. Now, the search function we saw just a moment ago expects a subtext string and then a larger text string. If you put a range or an array into either one of these, it means the function turns into an array. So for us, we have to ask, are any of these in this range? That's the text defined. Are any of those, comma, within this single text string? Now, because we put a range here, the search will return an array of numbers. Now, actually, it will only return one number because we don't have any duplicates here, a number and all the rest errors. Close parentheses. Now, let's just see if that's true. Highlight this and hit the F9 key. 1, value, 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 value. If we were going to look down here, it will return value 17, value, 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 value. Now, why do we use 2 to the 15th? Well, let me Control Z on this. 2 to the 15th, because the biggest number that search could return is 2 to the 15th minus 1. And by using this, we cover all bases. It's bigger than any particular number in here. So we'll always extract the position, and we don't have any duplicates here, of any number put here. Now, let's come to the end. That's our this one right here, that's our lookup vector. And if we comma, we can say result vector. And that's simply our instructor names over here. So what's happening with the lookup? It's got a lookup value, a big number. This is the lookup vector, which is errors in numbers. It's going to look here. When it finds the corresponding value here, it'll say true. Notice the E18 to E13 is the same size as this. So when it finds a true here, it'll return the name here. Now, actually, we need to lock this. I'm going to hit the F4 key for each one of these and then copy it down. Now, I got to close parentheses. And this search is an array. We don't have to do Control-Shift-Enter because lookup can handle the array. Copy it down. So 2 things. There's lookup with 2 arrays, the lookup vector and the result vector. And then also, it can handle an array. Now, let's go over to our next sheet and look at a similar example. But here, instead of looking up a larger text string and finding matching a smaller one, we're going to look up a partial here and try and find it within this list, which has the larger text string. Highline, South, Green River, these are all colleges. But in our lookup table to return instructor VP instructor, we have the full name. Our database has the full name. So we have our records like this because we're entering in the short version. So let's see how we can do this. Equals lookup. Let me change the equals lookup. And the lookup value is going to be our big number again. Close comma, and then search. Now we have the slightly different situation here. We don't have the smaller ones. The find text, it's going to be our single value right here, comma, and then we're going to look through this whole range here. Again, this is the reverse of what we did just a moment ago. Now I'm going to lock this one going down, hitting the F4 key. This one also. This search will do the same thing. F9 it, and you can see it returns value errors and numbers because it found one, the 1, 2, 3, 4th. So Highline is the 4th one. Control Z, we don't want to lock that in. If we scroll over, we can see 1, 2, 3, 4. Highline is the 4th one, even though it says Highline Community College. All right, comma, and then the lookup vector for us is going to be this instructor list. So this is another example of, and I need to F4 that. This is another example when VLOOKUP has a lookup vector, a result vector, and it's an example that it can handle arrays. Control Enter, and double click and send it down. I said Control Enter, not Control Shift Enter. Now we saw this one before with the VLOOKUP, approximate partial text. This is another version of that. Now let's go on, and we want to see another great use for lookup. Lookup. Make this just a little bit bigger, and we want to find the last value in either a column here, so that would be the last value right there, 32, or last value in a row. Now we're going to have another big number here, but it's the biggest number that Excel understands. So we're going to do lookup. The lookup value is going to be not 2 to the 15th. That's characters in a cell. This is the biggest number Excel can handle. So it's the big num, as many people call it, 9.9, and then 14 nines. And then E plus 307. That's exponential notation there. Biggest number, comma, and we want to highlight this whole range here. Now, how does this work? I'm going to hit nothing, just close parentheses. Now, remember, approximate match only. And we saw this in our first video about VLOOKUP in this Highline series, number 40. Look up functions for approximate. It races through. If it gets to the last value, which would be way over here because that's the whole range, and it hasn't found, actually, yeah, if it hasn't found this big value, it then returns the last one. So when we Control Enter, it returns that 32. If I put a 1 here, it'll return the 1. And this formula will handle spaces. Control Z. Last one in a row is easy. Look up 9 point E plus 307. Now, why are we using this? You don't really need to use the big number. You got to pick a reasonable number that you know could never go into this particular data set. I'm going to highlight this right here. And then close parentheses. And it got it there also. Let's put a 1 down here. And I have these two linked. So now it returns both of those. All right, so that is a great use for lookup. One final use over here, sheet 7. Last trick for lookup. Hey, we're going to do conditional formatting. Now, in an earlier video in this class, we did conditional formatting. And there we did a two-way lookup and got the intersection. So for us, it would be 2 right there. And we added some format. Now, in that video, we did exact matches on both. But what if you have an approximate match here? So we're going to see how to do conditional formatting with that. Alt-O-D. That's the keyboard shortcut for conditional formatting. In 2007, you click on New Rule, Formula, and then click right here. In 2003, you just click the first text box and say Formula is. And here's our formula. Let's highlight the whole column first. That's the easy part. We're going to say, notice we've highlighted the range and the active cell is right there. So we need to ask for this column, that one, and I want to lock it going down, so $ in front of the number only. Is that equal to this? Locked in all directions. And I'm going to say the color red, say. Fill red, font white. And then click OK. Click OK, click OK. So we got that working. That one's working. If we change this to 1, boom, just like that. We got to highlight the whole range. Active cell there, Alt-O-D. But we need an and. We need a second condition. And actually, why don't we go ahead and we'll apply one going across the row. New rule. And now we're going to say, is this, here's the active cell, so we're building the formula from that point of view. And that needs to be locked going across the columns, but not the rows. Is that equal to, and we're going to use lookup. Open parenthesis. And the value we're looking up is this, comma, through this range right here. Now think about this. Lookup, this is sorted ascending, which works perfect. It's doing an approximate match, which is perfect. And VLOOKUP always returns the value from the last column. So the fact that we highlighted just B, boom, it does it. Click Format. And why don't we do some green? We'll do like that green right there. Click OK, click OK. Now let's do the intersection. Same from the active cell there, Alt-O-D. I'm going to actually double click this and highlight it. Copy, because we're going to use that. Oh, these both are being applied. If we want them both to be applied, the logic from both, we have to use an and. So new rule, formula equals and. Control V, comma, and then I'll have to build the second one again. That was this, locked going down, equals this. Close parentheses. So the and has this logical test right there and this logical test right there, all the way to that comma. Now format it, and green and red are complements on the color wheel, so that means they make gray. So I'm going to pick gray. Maybe that gray right there when you mix them. So click OK, click OK, click OK. So there it is. We have a little table done with conditional formatting, including the lookup function. Now when I change this to 3, it changes there. And I change this to 5,000, which means way above there. The allowance is $53. All right, so lookup. When we come back, we'll do a video on match and then on to index. See you then.